establish foundation. Why we do what we do, the heart behind it. And the heart for this second session is to jump into some nuts and bolts stuff. Once again, I'm not an expert at this, but this is some stuff that we've done on our team that really helped. It helped us focus. It helped us to hear the Lord's voice. It helped us to hear what we were supposed to do, what we were not supposed to do. It really helped us get a pulse in our community. And that's something that's ever happening. And we haven't reached an end to that, and I don't think we ever will. If so, we run the risk of being stagnant. So it's always going to be a little fluid, I think, in what's going on and how you're reaching and what things need to look like. The needs could change as generations change, as demographics change. It's all fluid in a way with that. But really the heart for this session, I've talked with Darla and Pastor Tim a little bit about the heart and the vision of what you guys want to do. And really the heart of this session is really to dive into mission and vision. To literally throw stuff on the board and see what sticks. Now, do I anticipate we leave here with a completely crystal clear version of the vision and a 3-sentence mission statement ironed out? No. But I think the hope as you guys get together as a group that wants to see this thing happen and committed and dedicated is that collectively you guys can start to gain traction headed that direction. We had many conversations like this when we started. Ours took place around a table. There was 9 of us. And we'd sit around and we'd just talk about, guys, this is what's on my heart. What are we going to do? What's God doing? What's our city need? What's going on? And we spent 8 or 9 months sitting around the table doing these exact things that we're going to do a little bit today. So today's not the cure-all. We're not going to walk out here solving all the world's problems.
What?
So we might, maybe 1 or 2. But it's really an exercise in just kind of everybody just getting on the same page and understanding this thing a little bit more and seeing what God is calling this to look like and how it's all going to play out, what it's supposed to be. Because here's the thing. There's a lot of great things that can be done in this city, in any city. But the key is figuring out what God is calling you to do. There are so many things. You could exhaust yourself trying to do everything and still not meet all the needs in any given city. So the key is figuring out what God is calling you to do. As a group, collectively, what is this thing supposed to look like? And out of that, you can develop a mission statement that's going to help be a measuring stick for how this thing plays out. That was something I never really understood the importance of until we went through the church planting cohort that Randy and Sheree were part of. We went through that, and Pastor Tim and all the coaches really helped us understand the importance of a mission statement and what it does and how it helps kind of govern what we do and lead us in fulfilling our calling. It's what you communicate to people. It's what people will become to know, to understand as your organization and what you do. It's how you can quantify things, qualify things, help people to really get on board with things and know what it's all about. So it's really important to be able to kind of hash through these things. And this is, like I said, it's going to be an ongoing thing. We won't figure it all out today. That's okay. But if we can take a step forward in clarity, that's huge. It's actually biblical. Habakkuk, getting into Habakkuk 2:2. I just use this as kind of as a basis for what we're going to do. It says, "Then the Lord replied, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. For the revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end. It will not prove false." Write it down so that somebody can run with it, because it's not going to prove false. I think that's awesome. And I think if we can do that today, if we can start to write it down, people can begin to run with it. Amen? And we can begin to see some fruition. So would you join me and we'll pray? And then we're just going to start jumping into this thing a little bit here and there. Sound good? Pastor Tim, would you pray for us, actually?
Sure. Let's pray. God, we just thank you, Lord, for this the awesome day that you've given us, Lord God, to come together, Lord, and to discuss your vision, your heart, Lord God. And this is all yours, Lord. We just want to be instruments. We just want to be vessels, your hands and your feet. So, God, I just pray for your Holy Spirit to be here. We invite your presence, Lord God, your anointing on Rusty, Lord, as he brings this from his heart, Lord God. And Father, I pray that you'll confirm, you'll clarify, Lord, you'll inspire us, Lord God, to do the vision, Lord, to perform the vision that you've given each one of us, whatever that may be. So, Lord, we just ask for that clarity as our hearts and our minds are open, Lord, and we just ask your Spirit to do in us, Lord God, what you will to do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. So let me ask you this, when you guys, maybe in this project or another project, as you start to think through what you can do, what it can look like, anybody ever feel overwhelmed? Anybody's head ever spin?
All the time. As I have my head under the chair, finding my pen.
It was spinning too much. No, and I think that's pretty standard and pretty normal. When we get a download from God or we feel an urge to start something, it can be exciting, confusing, frustrating, scary. Did I say exciting? It can be everything all at once, right? And one of the things, just from my own personal experience, that I wrestle with is, as a dreamer, sometimes I dream too much, and I have all these ideas, and all these other ideas, and all these other ideas, and all these other things, and all this and that, and this, and the next thing I know, I'm confused, and I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And so, one of the things that helped me and our team when we developed the Dream Center was we sat down and we said, okay, what are the variables that we know? For us, we knew we were called to Akron. We didn't know what part of the town, we just knew we were called to Akron. And we knew we were supposed to do something Dream Center-esque in our approach. And so we started there. So and I think this is a great place for you guys to start because you know you're called to Martinsburg, right? That's. Would you guys all be in unity with that? You're called to Martinsburg. And so one of the things that we can do here today is begin to survey the community from what you already know. And I think the survey, to best suit it, it's something that should continue. Like, if you could start to poll residents, if you could start to talk to people that you minister to through moms or that you know. It doesn't have to be just the impoverished community. If addiction's a problem, talk to people who wrestle with addiction. If human trafficking is a problem, talk to some of those people. The mentally developmental people with those issues, talk to them. Start talking to people and really kind of get their pulse on what's going on. Because I think what you'll find, we're going to go through this exercise, but our perspective could be a little bit different than their perspective. The people who live this thing out every day would be able to give you different insight than what we might have from our vantage point. A huge part of this too is defining who the key players in your community to talk to are. For us, I sat down with one of the police lieutenants that focuses on our side of town, in our specific community. I talked with him. He was a wealth of knowledge. I talked to the manager at Wilbur Arlington Homes. She had a different perspective than the police officer did. We talked to residents of Wilbur Arlington Homes who had a different perspective than those two did. So what you get is, as you talk to more people, you start to get a better picture. You're able to put this puzzle together, and it paints a better, more accurate picture of what's really going on in the community. That could be the mayor, that could be city officials, other church leaders. You guys have been here for a while. You have an advantage. We were moving back to a city. So we were kind of starting from the ground. Most of you have lived here for years, so you have that pulse, and you know who those people are, and you know some of those conversations, and some of the answers already, so you're a step ahead in that regard. But it's definitely worth continuing the conversation with other folks to get other perspectives and other insight and other feedback. But one of the things that I thought we could start by doing, knowing that you know for sure that you're called to Martinsburg, let's talk about the city. Let's have some conversation and write down what are the strengths. Let's start with that. What are some of the things that this city does really well? What are some of the strengths of the community? Maybe it's, okay, so here's an example. So maybe with drug addiction, maybe you have a very good addiction support system in this community. Like, what are some of those strengths that are already happening?
I think our location is a strength.
Okay. How so?
We're right on a major thoroughfare, and so we are a very regional area. I mean, just a couple minutes up
Access.
the road, we're in Hagerstown, a couple minutes down the road, we're in Winchester, we got
Okay.
Charlestown, and there's potential for a lot of influence
Okay.
because of our location.
Okay. How about, does that translate to access to resource and things of that nature? To an extent, so maybe not.
I feel like a lot of it's starting to trickle in. So
Okay.
the ideas are there, the mindset's there. We're on the very beginning of all that starting to kind of come together, I
Okay.
feel,
Okay.
with our community.
Okay.
It's also a two-sided coin, because that's also how drugs get here.
Sure. No, I get
So,
that.
on the flip side.
I get that for sure. How about what are some of the strengths? What are some of the things that are happening that's really good in your community? Is there a strong faith presence? Is the schooling system good? What are some things that your communities do well, that your community does well?
We
we have the greatest concentration of resources statewide in
Okay.
terms of finances and stuff. We're one of the wealthiest area of the state.
Okay, so we'll call it financial resources. A challenge might be employing those resources, but at least they're here. Is that accurate?
There's also a lot more representation politically from this area than other areas of West Virginia.
Okay, so maybe a little more pull when it comes to, okay. Could I say political influence?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for my handwriting. Somebody else, what are some strengths of the city?
There are a lot of churches.
There's a lot of churches?
There's a lot of faith-based whatever out there,
Okay.
a lot.
Now, do people, let me ask you this, because a lot of churches doesn't necessarily translate to a strength. And I don't mean that to knock churches, I'm just saying it may not be a great climate in the community. With there, Pastor Tim, maybe you can speak into this from your vantage point too, but with there being a lot of churches, does that stand as a strength in the positive influence and in how things are received in the overall perspective? Is it a conservative community? Is there a lot of church influence? What have you guys seen?
Church influence-wise, and if we're talking in the city, I believe there is a lot of church influence.
Okay.
And somebody had mentioned this too, well, I think Darla did too. There is a lot of churches, Christian community, attempting to do a lot of things in the city of Martinsburg.
Okay.
Whether it be street ministry or ministry out of the church.
Okay.
And there, I think, is a great effort in that. Fruit-wise, I don't know about that. That's
Sure.
would be a hard thing to measure.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
But we do have a lot of churches that are making those attempts to do a lot of things.
Okay.
And some of that we learned from speaking with people in the homeless camps and so on, because they have the schedule down for their day. They know what church is providing what on what day. They live by that schedule.
They got the
So-
cycle.
Yeah, so we, in the time that we've spoken with homeless people that live in these camps, there's never been a time where they were in great need as long as they were able to travel. So there were a lot of Christian resources out there for them.
Perfect. So the faith community is rallying together around these folks. That's
Yeah, I mean,
definitely-
there's a lot we could see, improvement in.
Sure.
So, but
Sure.
there is a strong influence in that aspect within the
Okay.
city limits.
Perfect. Anybody else? What are some strengths?
One strength that we have is a small strength, but it's getting stronger, and that is public transportation.
Okay. Yeah, that's a huge
It
strength.
plays a huge role
Yep.
in a lot of things. It doesn't go far enough yet, but we do have it.
Is there plans to develop that more?
I don't know, and that's where, we as a small group of people, I know I'm not plugged in civically into
Sure.
any of these groups, but I can't imagine Procter & Gamble building a huge thing out here without paying for transportation to bring people, workers to them. And so, I don't know, I just really was hoping that once this new industry started here, that our public transportation would be expanded this way.
Sure.
I think they are looking at expanding it, if they haven't already, I think they're looking at expanding the routes, and they're also
Okay.
starting to build shelters, like actual little bus depots that people can sit
Oh, awesome. Okay.
underneath.
Yes.
And I know they've already done that at a couple places already.
Yeah, and that's huge because that can be a gateway for whatever you guys decide to do. Like that's really the heart behind figuring out strengths. Like
Yeah.
what can we come alongside? What's going to help us? What are things that are already doing well that maybe we don't need to touch? Like there's a huge gain in talking through strengths. So.
I'd say another strength would be a collaboration, like
Okay.
we're starting to see certain entities starting to come together to figure out
Okay.
how do we start working together, and how do we build upon what's already there.
Now, would you see that more in the faith side of things, in
In the secular side of things, in both. I mean, do you have like some cross integration happening?
For me personally, what I've seen is I know with the recovery or with the addiction population, we just in the last 2 years have gotten a recovery resource network, which
Okay.
has kind of been a one-stop shop. So if someone's looking for addiction services, they can go to this one place and they start throughout the whole entire state having this network of where they can plug in. And then where I'm currently working at, we're trying to do a partnership with the school system and the police department, but we're trying to make it a whole community effort of
Sure. And I think that's probably huge for what you guys want to do. Kind of there being an atmosphere of collaboration already. Sounds like that could really play into it. So that's great. Any other strengths you can think of?
I think, I work in the school system, and I have probably more than any other school system I've worked in, found that principals are much more open to the faith-based community here
Awesome.
than in other places that I've been.
Okay.
There's one principal of a high school that I know of who literally like has stated publicly, we have challenges we don't know how to face, so we're calling in the pastors to help. So,
Yeah, there's already an existing program, the Talk to Me or the Listener program, where they try to get clergy to come in and just listen to
listen.
kids.
Okay.
High school and junior high level,
Yeah.
mostly high school.
That's fantastic, by the way. Like,
Yeah.
that's a huge vacuum in a lot of urban schools, like in Akron and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
it can be a huge vacuum. And that creates a lot of problems on so many different levels. So that's a huge strength, by the way. And a huge open door. For this church, any church that's in the city, that's a huge open door. So that's awesome.
Randy, Rusty,
Yeah.
sorry.
It's,
Besides
it's all good.
Anyway, two things I'm thinking of. One is, and this is kind of a touchy one, but at least right now, jobs are a strength.
Okay.
Problem with that is first for people that don't have the transportation, getting to the jobs. And
Sure,
secondly is a lot of those jobs can't be filled because of the drug activity that the people
Okay.
have.
So there's opening in jobs,
Opportunity.
it's just getting people to
Yes.
connect to those jobs.
Right,
Okay.
whether it be here in this
Qualify,
county,
to qualify for the job.
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
whether it's in this county, just across the state line, not far from here,
sure.
there is at least currently a very good job, a job base.
Okay.
And then another thing I was thinking of, somebody brought it to my mind. A few years ago, we had Martinsburg had a new police chief. He came from the Chicago area, and he has instituted a program where they basically shut down drug houses in the city limits, and they shut down, I forget the statistic, but quite a few already. And they actually hold the landlord responsible for cleaning up their own property as far as the drug activity.
Okay.
So there is a strength, I guess, on that, which could lead to another issue where you have displaced people and so on.
Sure,
But
sure.
strength-wise, as far as looking at the drug problem, they are trying to eliminate it that way, or at least put a dent in it. So I guess that's a strength.
Sure. You don't realize how terrible your handwriting is until you do something like that and people have to read it. Anything else, guys? And this doesn't have to be exhaustive. We can sit here for hours and think of more and more, and I encourage you to continue these conversations. But any other huge, like, blaring strengths that stick out at you before we move on?
one other thing to mention with collaboration, and what you were saying with the police department, they now notify schools. So like if there's, overnight, if there's an incident at a student's school, they will find out what school that student goes to and notify the principal. It's called handle with care.
Okay.
And so we don't find out what happens, but we get a handle with care notice.
Okay.
So I think that's a really, that
That's
could be,
huge.
yeah, that should be an
It is.
interesting way for us to help too, I
So
think.
you're saying if a student's at home and mom gets busted for drugs or something,
Yeah.
they
If the police show up at that house
Okay.
and there's an incident, we get a notification
Gotcha.
that something happened in that student's life last
Gotcha.
night.
I think that's
That's huge.
massive on a lot of different levels.
Absolutely.
Well, the nice thing about that program too is if that child starts exhibiting issues,
Yeah.
the point of that program is to actually connect them with mental health services as well.
Okay.
So it's kind of watching that child through the entire process,
Yeah, yeah.
make sure that it's not gonna affect them long term either.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'd be curious to see where a faith element could implement into that.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it, because I feel like
Yeah.
that's a possibility for us.
See, I got my wheels turning. I can't do this.
Watch
The
out.
dreamer's gonna start coming out. We're all in trouble. Anyhow, sorry. We'll move. I think that's awesome though. It's cool to hear, and I'm not saying that Akron is void of some of these things entirely, but there are definitely some obstacles.
Yeah.
And our schools are in dire needs. They're not in great shape, so Akron is not known for its public schools. But okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. It's very important to recognize a community's strengths because that's what we can come alongside of. Those are resources, those are availabilities, those are opportunities those are things that are already in the works that we can, as a faith community, and whatever you guys are developing, you can come alongside some of these strengths and really be a player in what's already happening. And that can help you then to adjust your focus on what some of the needs are, so that you're not spinning your wheels with some other things. You see what I'm saying? It really helps kind of guide along the way. So let's talk needs, and I know I probably need more room here. So we'll go. It's easy to rattle off the needs because you've noticed them. They're obvious to you, especially when you're doing street ministry, when you're doing the kind of ministry that you guys are involved with. So let's be exhaustive as we can with this list. What are the needs that you see? I know we've talked about some, but let's just start from scratch. Mentoring, okay. Which, by the way, in breaking the cycle of poverty, that's one of the biggest contenders, aside from Jesus, that can factor into that equation.
The addiction issues.
Addiction. I'm not at being left-handed. I'm just going to stay on this side of the board.
Put the board on the other side.
Oh, yeah, I did do that. I said I'm a dreamer, not a thinker. We're different. We are different. Can everybody see okay? All right. What are some other needs? Traffic. Okay.
Family shelters.
Family shelters? Like for the whole family unit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, lack of family shelters.
Because we've talked about there being men's and women's shelters, correct? Just not one for the family unit?
Yeah, they're 14 bed.
I mean, what I was hearing, I was reading from the men's shelters that they don't wanna go because there's bed bugs, the women's shelter has mold, so it's just.
Okay. Maybe not the greatest facilities. Okay.
Well, and the culture inside the shelter
Yeah,
is
sure.
intimidating.
Just as rough as it is.
It's rough, and I know from my own daughter-in-law's experience, you know, she was in a room with 3 bunk beds, and there was a 12-year-old boy with his mother that slept in the same room with all these other women. And so that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
And, there was a point where a long time ago, a 12-year-old was the cutoff. A 12-year-old boy had to stay in the men's shelter.
Okay.
And that caused problems for single
Yeah.
moms. And so I think they would remedy that some way. But,
Where some sort of family shelter
Yeah.
would be huge.
yeah.
Yeah.
Something that's not group oriented.
Yeah, sure. Individual rooms or
Yeah,
something. Sure.
Say even skill building for
Okay.
parents, life skills, any kind. There's, from
Okay.
I know, there's nothing really.
And parenting skills.
Yeah.
That's a huge one.
Parenting?
It really is,
Okay.
because, yeah,
Mentorship for the
a
parents.
lot of the problems that we find in the school system is because we cannot get parents involved at all.
Yeah. That's huge. So it sounds like homelessness is probably a need, correct? If we're talking about shelters, and so there's probably, we met, some of those folks last night. And you could call it needs, you could call it issues. We're tracking with what this comes. What are some other things?
I think childcare is an issue.
Childcare?
I have a lot of students who have to stay home to watch younger siblings because their parents have to work.
Or parents don't work, which keeps the cycle rolling, right?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Childcare is a huge one. We didn't realize how expensive childcare was until we had our second child. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is a whole new world. House payment is nothing compared to childcare. My goodness.
Yeah.
So,
There's
off my
a-
high horse, what else?
There's a huge rural component in this area that, people can't access resources easily.
Okay, so we'll call access to resources, which echoes what we said. There might be enough resources, but it's just getting those to the right people that need them. Okay?
Say even activities for children.
Okay.
A positive instructive program for the children to get into.
Okay.
And like after school programs, kids aren't alone.
which again, the lack of those factors into mom and dad not working potentially. So,
So one of the things that happened here, when our dead mall ceased to be and they tore it down, the only indoor public places for vagrants to go is the library and now the train station. And so that's a real need, is an indoor place to be, to use bathroom, a public bathroom, a public place to go inside out of the
facilities.
elements.
Right, out of the heat.
Yeah.
okay. Okay. Anything else you guys can think of? Cool.
Oh, one of the things I thought of is kind of on the other side of the collaboration thing is a lot of little things working independently of each other. If we could do more unifying and pooling of resources, it'd probably be more effective.
That's great. Cool. So those are definitely some of the needs. We've got some of the strengths. Now the last thing we'll do in kind of surveying Martinsburg is what are some of the things that are already existing? What are some of the ministries, some of the organizations that are already at work? What are some of the like we talked about the police and the schools working together? What are some of the things that are already set in place to help facilitate a meeting of these needs?
Kids Power Pack.
What is it?
Kids Power Pack, which is feeding the kids.
Okay. Is that a ministry or is that okay? Kids Power Pack.
Yeah, KPP.
Yeah, they make the backpacks for kids that they come with food in it.
Yeah, I think we actually have two of them.
Yeah,
Power
there's
Pack
the-
and backpack for
There's a
everybody.
backpack
Okay.
program and kids power pack.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Three Boys and Girls Club
Okay.
in the rec center.
How effective? Just curious. How is that? Do kids go there a lot? Is it?
It depends on
Yeah.
funding.
Okay.
Um,
Because they have to pay for memberships there, correct?
Yeah, now they do have scholarships for some kids, but, you know, they have a limited amount of funding and
Sure.
it's chaotic. It's structured chaos from the times that I've been in there, so it's.
Most kids programs. do
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Mom's ministry.
Moms, absolutely. Let's put it up there.
there's the Talk to Me program.
Talk to me. What is that?
That's the one we were talking about earlier where pastors go into some of the schools. and
Oh,
talk
right.
to
Okay.
kids.
Okay.
Master's closet, but,
Oh, yeah.
goods to people in need.
And Tabitha's closet.
Okay. What else we got?
Well, I mean, we have, on a large scale, we've got CCAP and Lowe's Additions, which helps with with financial resources to
Okay.
pay bills, so it's C and then C-CAP, all capitals. It's an acronym, I don't really know what it stands for.
But they meet financial.
They will help pay bills
Okay.
and they give out vouchers for like if you need steel-toed boots for your job,
Okay,
they give
okay.
you that kind of thing.
That's good.
And then Loaves and Fishes, that's like a giant food pantry.
Okay. I'm just gonna call it food pantry because
Yep,
you'll see why here in a second.
yep.
Catholic charities too.
I'm sorry.
The Catholic charities.
Catholic Charities. Okay. What do they have like a specific focus in this community?
Yes, yeah, they have an office downtown across from the library, and they give out vouchers for motels, for food, for
Car
electric
seat,
bill,
they give
car
out car
seat,
seats.
yeah,
Okay.
just about anything you want.
So they're a financial resource.
They are a financial
Okay,
resource,
okay.
yes.
That's important. Okay.
And there's tons of churches, like they can get a hot, you know, like almost every day of the week.
Okay. Okay.
There's also Bethany Services, which is, they're more a social, resource as far as like, well, adoption and foster care, but they also help with, temporary housing for families that are
Okay.
displaced. They try to work with the churches to find places for people to stay temporarily,
Gotcha.
you know, if your house
They're
burns,
displaced or
or if
something.
somebody's displaced for whatever reason, yeah,
Okay.
so it's called Bethany Services.
Okay.
And then the rescue missions of Everett.
Yeah.
And that's housing as well, correct?
Yeah,
And they
Don't
shed
they do
the bill up.
meals? Rescue mission, don't they do meals too?
they do meals and showers.
They're only for men, right?
Anybody can eat there, and for a while, anybody could shower there, but now they send the women over to the women's mission, the women's shelter for
us. I'm sorry, follow women's. Play your strength. Play your strength. Shelter. Okay.
There's CASA, which provides court advocacy for youth.
And this is so we've got all this happening within Martinsburg, huh? You laughing? Am I right?
No,
No.
Oh, I see. I'm laughing
I
as
guess
I'm
mine
laughing.
too, with that partnership, where I work at, is the Martinsburg Initiative. Yeah.
What is it? I'm sorry.
The Martinsburg Initiative,
Okay.
or TMI. That was something we put in.
TMI.
Yeah.
Really?
The
It's really TMI.
That's our acronym.
That's hilarious.
What does that focus on?
So basically the goal of that is our goal is to prevent drug use by preventing trauma or mitigating the effects of trauma.
Okay.
Through different aspects of the community, pulling in all these different community resources that we currently have.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you guys feel like that's a pretty fair representation of what's going on in the city? Anything big that we've missed? Methadone clinic? Okay. That's obviously tailored to the drug addiction.
We have a new drug rehab center that just opened up too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Detox center, is that what you're
There's detox and then there's the Mountaineer Recovery Center too, which is the inpatient 28-day rehab center.
That's right up on the VA hospital.
Yeah.
They're in the process of doing that.
I was reading an article about Oxford Health.
Yeah.
Transitional
housing.
Okay. So there's a lot of works focused around the drug epidemic, it sounds like, and I think that's pretty standard for cities and communities. Like, I don't know that any city is really immune from the epidemic. Akron is huge for meth. I don't know how many meth houses they bust in a year, but the numbers are crazy. We used to refer to it, I don't know if it's a statistic but like as the meth capital of the world, it's horrible. So looking at this list, like one of the things that you can do, and this isn't a tell-all, this isn't oh, we can't do that, or we can, but one of the things you can do is you can really look and see, what's KK?
Kids
KPP. That's
It's a feeding
food,
program.
okay? So we actually didn't put food security as a problem, did we?
It addresses like for the kids that don't get to eat on the weekends.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
So it should be under the.
Yes, so it should be,
So food security should be over here.
yeah.
So here's what we can start to do. We can kind of start to cross-reference this thing and see where the holes are in the community. This isn't, obviously, none of these lists are completely exhaustive, so it may not give you a complete 100% total picture, but it can really start to help paint the picture a little bit. So you've got stuff that's meeting food security. You've got things that are really nailing addiction. I mean, we could go through, so KPP, Sit Food Security, Boys and Girls Club, that's probably mentoring, right? Kind of what they focus on, or not so much?
You're more child care to an extent.
Child care, okay. Well, this is great. So we've got this, Moms obviously is hitting food security. Are there any other aspects of Moms, Darla, that you guys hit specifically?
Not on a regular basis.
Okay. No, that's okay.
We've helped with transportation, we've helped with some household items, but
Okay.
for the most part, it's just.
It's the food security element. Okay.
security.
Nothing wrong with that. Talk to me. Would you call that mentoring?
Yes.
Okay. So we can get the mentoring. How about Masters in Tabitha? That's okay.
The master's closet, yeah, that's like food, I mean, like furniture.
That's furniture and housing and
Clothing.
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 Would that does that kind of go with the homelessness issue? Not, I guess not really in that sense, huh?
It helps set them up once they get
Yeah.
housing, literally poverty.
Poverty, yeah.
Okay. So
I
if
wish
we
we didn't like this.
Yeah, probably.
that's right. Okay.
Trauma is also a big, I mean,
Trauma.
there's trauma.
Okay. I'm squeezing it in. So. Okay, so if we've got Masters in Tabitha hitting poverty, we've got CCAP, which is financial. We're hitting financial resources there. Food pantries, we're hitting food security. Catholic Charity is a financial resource, correct? That's what we said they predominantly are. Meals at churches, we're hitting food security. Bethany's rescue, that's housing, so we're talking, we're hitting homelessness, right? Okay. And the rescue. Women's shelter, that's more, is that housing or is that more like support for battered women?
It's both. They offer housing,
Okay.
it's two different domestic violence and trafficking.
Okay.
They also have transitional housing where they graduate from the women's shelter and they
Okay.
get their own apartment.
Okay.
And then they have to cook their own meals and they help them get jobs and so there's like a transition.
Okay.
So
Is that more for battered women? Is the
that's
focus
for
of that
any
kind of?
women, any homeless.
Oh, so,
women.
okay, so
Yeah.
it's homeless, okay. So Casa's hitting, some of the juvenile issues.
ERG is children, so I guess youth is also in youth.
We're just adding to this list, that's right?
Yeah.
We're painting a picture.
And also, one thing we talked about at lunch that's a need was that because of the opiate crisis, there's a lot of grandparents raising their
Oh,
children and they
yes,
need
yes.
support.
There's actually a program that helps.
So that would fit with parenting, it's just like a different form of parenting.
Yeah.
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 Is there anything that
It's
helps
a parenting program.
grandparents? Any programs that help grandparents?
Yep.
RAP, it's RAPP, which is Relatives as Parenting Program.
Okay.
They offer support groups and different other things with that.
Can you
Is
guys
there
read my
one
chicken
place to
scratch?
go in our city to find a list of all these things?
Kind of, that's another thing that we're trying to do is create a one-stop shop for everything. We're in the process of kind of expanding, and creating hub places.
Is there a United Way in the city?
Tim and I tried to do that years
There
and
is?
years ago.
Do they have like our United Way in Akron has an actual sheet, a list of all the resources by breakdown, like
Yeah,
what they focus on?
we do have that. Some of the schools have that too.
Okay. They call it like a street list or something. I heard
Yeah,
before.
it's some kind of directory. I think it's
Okay.
called the directory or something.
So if we look over here, TMI, so it's on drug recovery, so we get, right?
Yeah, it's that, it's trying to hit mentoring and it's also addressing trauma too.
Okay. And we got methadone, obviously that's hitting addiction as well. So with what we were able to come up with, if you look, things addressing poverty and food security, there's a surplus of in this community. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. We're painting an accurate picture of what needs are being met by whom, where, and how that's happening. So we've got a lot of poverty and food security resources out there, and that's great because I'm sure there's plenty of that need to go around. Addiction is pretty high as well. Mentoring, I mean that kind of sticks out. There's one that kind of touches mentoring. We've got trafficking, one thing kind of hitting that. Family shelters and facilities. I mean, I guess you could count some of these as facilities, but I think we were talking more like public spaces that people
Right.
could go, which there isn't. There's nothing. And this is pretty, like from what we found in our city, we launched a program based on this being completely neglected. I don't even think they teach it in Akron Public Schools. They teach elements of it, but there's no class where kids really go learn how to build a resume. There's no class where kids go learn how to balance a checkbook. I mean, not that anybody uses checkbooks anymore, but balance a budget, how to form a budget, how to work a budget. There's nothing. We'll teach kids algebra and calculus and all the, but no one teaches kids these things. And if kids don't know these things, they fall right here.
Yeah.
That's my soapbox. Sorry.
A lot of that
Um,
stuff now is even being taught from like the community colleges. So
Yeah.
It's like.
Because they
wait,
didn't
to
get it in
that
high
level,
school. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's
Absolutely.
like, you know, because I've been involved with some things where they collect, they go around to businesses and ask for your old professional clothes. And they're doing that from
Because
the
they're
community
helping the
college at
kids,
such a
right.
higher level where you would like to see some kids learn the life skills earlier in life.
Yeah.
Because not everybody's gonna make it to the college level.
How to dress, how to go on an
Yeah.
interview.
Yeah.
Well, and the problem is when they get to community college level, they're an adult already. They probably should have had some
It
sort of
would've
a
been nice
job
to work a
already.
Summer job or something.
Right.
earlier in life.
And these kids are way behind on the things that's going to provide for their family. Like, you know, not every kid has the ambition to go to college, but I would venture to say that probably, I don't know what percentage, most kids are going to have a family one day of some form. whether that's helping mom out, having kids, having a spouse, having or whatever. And I'll get off my life skills soapbox, I'm sorry. But parenting, I mean, we've got one, there's one thing that helps with parenting. Homeless, we've got shelters that are doing the best they can. Sometimes they get overrun and bogged down. That's just the reality of it, and it gets messy because of that. Childcare, we got, Boys and Girls Club kind of carrying the weight, the umph of that, if I understood correctly. Access to resources. So that could be just a liaison to help people. Like a lot of times social workers fill that role. So there may be more of that happening, just not at an organization, like a nonprofit organization level. A lot of social workers help with that. Constructive activities. You want to talk about trying to prevent this a little bit? Give kids something good to do with their life. Listen, I'll just be honest with you. When I used to sit around and smoke weed with my friends, we would talk. We'd be like, "Why are we doing this? Because there's nothing else to do."
Right.
Honest, that's as honest as I can be. Those were the reasons we came up with, because there was nothing else to do. So we did it. And if we could give them something else to do, maybe they wouldn't do it. I don't know. Maybe they still would. But, so we've got, a little touch on abuse. And that can be a hard one. A lot of specialists and sometimes there's certifications and, a lot of education that has to go into that. Public facilities, we really, facilities twice, don't we?
Well, the one was talking about how poor the shelter facilities are.
I got you. Okay. But this is the public facilities we're talking about, so there's really nothing there. Trauma, we've got one hitting that, and then unifying. Do you guys have any organizations? So in Akron, we have one called Love Akron, and the whole purpose of the organization is all the faith-based community, the nonprofits, they're all a part of this Love Akron thing. And it's really just bringing people together. Like, it's not that it's like a building that they go to, it's an organization that tries to link everybody together. Is that a part of this?
Yes.
Okay. So,
There's that one organization,
Community.
the Godwin Park people.
God one,
Oh,
God
yeah.
one ministry.
You would
There's
call
a-
them a unifying?
Well,
Well, I don't know.
well, the purpose though, there's been several churches over the years that have made, or leaders that have made an attempt to do this. And the one they're talking about, has made an attempt to bring churches together through an association.
okay.
But there's a lot of concerns surrounding that, as has been with some of the previous ones that never really took shape. But they were very focused on more of a church, and not just, nonprofits.
Gotcha, okay.
But I don't think there's any one big, strong one that I'm familiar with.
And for us, like, since the last time that we've had a conversation about this, we've talked to some people that are mentors in our life who have gotten involved with God One Ministries, and they're like very adamant about that.
Really?
So it's like in seeing somebody who's involved, and they're like, we think that this person's genuine, and really putting their effort and time behind it.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, maybe we didn't see the full picture, and maybe there's, it's like, and through time, like in all of us, God is like making changes and
Could
improvements.
very well be.
I think that also brings up something really important that we probably should talk about, is, we talked about trust earlier with like the people we're ministering to, but I think there's an issue with trust as far as the faith-based community in trusting each other.
You mean that happens in other places?
Which makes that last thing difficult.
Oh yeah, anybody who
Right.
would tackle that, I tip my hat to. Because not an easy fight.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's worth mentioning is that like there's like some parallel paths being taken, like Martinsburg Renew and certain other
Sure.
people that are like that are feeling the same as us. They're taking a slightly different path.
Sure.
It's kind of parallel that we're like you could say, I guess, like we're friends with them and we participate with them, but we recognize that we're going to take a slightly different path. than
Yeah.
them. So they're not, if they were like successful and a big organization, then we would mention them, but they're just kind of starting out
Sure.
like the way we are.
Okay.
So they're, so they're not there, but like I know that they've done some of the block parties and stuff, and you guys have actually participated in it.
Right,
So it's
yeah,
like,
we joined together last year
yeah.
and did.
What is their major focus?
Well,
more community, probably. A little
yeah,
less
his big goal, he's the one I talked about that wanted to have the drug rehab center, the step down units, the
Yeah,
halfway
okay.
house, the community center and the entrepreneurial, storefront available. That was sort of his initial pitch.
So kind of a civic
Because
standpoint?
there's a great big space that he wants to transform,
Okay.
to help alleviate, the ugliness of downtown.
Okay, okay.
And to get rid of the area
stigma.
where the bad stuff happens. Right, and so that would, and bring, upstanding citizens back into that area.
Okay. Definitely coming from a community standpoint. Like I
Yeah,
said.
very much a
Okay.
community. He's also, but he also mentioned that he would like it to be faith-based. I mean, he wants God in it.
Sure.
But he's coming from a whole different perspective as far as like what his role is in the community
Okay.
and what the knowledge base that he has is much different than ours.
Sure.
And I don't see us competing at all. I think that they would actually dovetail well together.
Yeah. And I would agree with that, just from hearing your heart and you know, what I've caught of it so far. I would definitely agree with that. Of the needs and I guess more the gaps or the voids, is there anything that's surprising to you guys? Like kind of seeing it sketched out a little bit, anything that's surprising?
I hadn't thought of the public facilities since the malls,
Yeah,
just how
same
like,
here.
if you're out on the streets, like,
Yeah.
you don't even have a place to go to the bathroom necessarily.
Right.
And I
Gas
hadn't
station or
thought of
something.
that aspect, but I can see now, thinking it through, that there's not a lot.
Well, I only know this because of my son, because he walks around with all of his friends and when even though they have a place to live, when they're out all day long and it's hot or it's super cold, they used to go to the mall. And here's what they used to do, they used to go to the mall, they had 2 hours that they could walk around the mall and security would make them leave. So then they would go to Walmart and walk around for 2 hours.
Just kind of bounce
Go
around
back.
a little bit.
So now they don't have that, now they can walk around outside, they go into Walmart, but then they'll have to leave, then they have the public, the bathrooms and stuff at the library. The library, I can't imagine what is happening there, because that has become the giant magnet for all vagrants.
Okay.
That and the train station, and that's an even scarier place, because it's not heavily populated.
Oh, gotcha.
And it's on the outside of town, and, I mean, there are some people there, but there's also a children's museum there.
Gotcha. Okay.
But you have people sitting outside using the plug to charge their phones, and they have restrooms there, and they can get inside,
Sure.
and so they're just being as resourceful as they can. They don't need to be, I don't think their intention is to be a nuisance.
Right.
They're just trying to take care of their own needs,
Trying to
because they
survive.
might have a place to stay, but if you're at the rescue mission, you have to leave after breakfast and you can't come back until, well, I think at 4 o'clock, you have to check in by 4,
Gotcha.
and you have to be in by 7. And if you're not there, then, so in between, you can't stay, you just
Okay.
can't hang out. You
Even
have to go
for
somewhere else.
gas stations, a lot of the gas
Yeah.
stations now keep their bathrooms locked.
Yeah.
Right?
No public restrooms.
Right.
Yeah.
The Lowe's parking lot, the sheds there on display.
Really?
Oh.
So they lock some of them and some of them aren't, and people
Oh,
have all their
gosh.
belongings in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just there like last
Wow.
week and
So that's a big need around the city.
Wow, I did not think about that, I just knew they always locked.
Any kind of shelter.
some of them are, but not all of them.
There was I took the kids to a community garden, we found like a little shed, and the kids found all this stuff, and we're like, all right, yeah, we're gonna get away.
Paraphernalia.
Paraphernalia.
Someone was living in those
Oh, living
abandoned
in there.
sheds, so we're
Oh.
like, let's get away from that section of the garden.
Wow.
We're
Yeah,
here.
right.
So a glaring need then is a place where people go.
Yes,
Mhm.
a true public access indoor place to go.
With charging stations,
Yeah.
couch
Yeah.
to sit on.
Yeah,
Somewhere warmer to keep them cool.
climate
Right,
control.
sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
get out of the weather, I mean,
Closure.
not
Where there
all
just
infested
happens to be
and
some life skills
Right.
and parenting
Oh,
classes
my.
taking place.
Wow.
See, you always
Wow.
starting to
And
get
and
in.
children's
The light
activities
bulb
and
goes
childcare.
Yeah, mentoring and.
well, while you're
Job is
here.
done.
Can I have your children?
It's over, let's go home.
I think it's just beginning.
Oh, it is.
Parenting class, we'll take.
But
Miss the light bulb, move it.
see, it's awesome when you can put stuff on paper. Like, it's awesome when the Bible works.
Yeah.
Write it down, make it clear,
You
people
know,
can run with it.
we've done that conversation similar to this, but we didn't have we didn't have these two ladies.
See, that's the
with
thing,
us.
it's, yeah.
And so bringing other people into it,
Sure.
and this was a much more detailed list. And I like the way that you cross-referenced it, because it's like, okay, well, even though poverty is a big problem, there's a lot of needs already addressing it.
Sure.
Mhm.
And it may, and this isn't to say that it's covering every need,
Right.
but there's
Right.
attempts and there's things happening.
But if some of those
So-
unneed nets were met, there would be less poverty.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's,
Yeah.
and that's a huge thing. Like with this, it can prevent this.
Mhm.
You know, constructive things for kids to do can be a part of preventing this, can be a part of preventing this. There's so many things that play in, like things are very cyclical, and when you interject something into this, it's like sticking your foot in a bike tire. As painful as that might be, you're gonna stop it from spinning again.
Mhm.
And that's what a lot of this, the attempt and the hope with these type of efforts is that we can stop the wheel from spinning again.
Right.
We can interject in kids' lives
Mhm.
before they get to this place that they need these other resources. You see what I'm saying? And so
And life skills touches a lot of them.
it really does. It does.
You can see how the life skills, it's possible for the life skills to turn into mentoring.
Yeah.
And it prevents poverty, it can facilitate better parenting. I mean, it's just kind of like trickles. I can see how it's easy to focus on something like that because you see how it touches all these
You
other
could
areas.
even vice versa too, because if you're mentoring, because we've got a couple mentoring programs, the problem with the mentoring programs is there's no mentors
Right.
to
For the
connect with the
program,
kids,
sure.
but if we could get more people from the church deciding to mentor a child one-on-one, that's even your opportunity to teach life skills. If you create that relationship with that child one-on-one, and you're
absolutely.
spending an hour a week with that child, you can then, as they start growing with you, be like, hey, do you know how to balance a checkbook? And you can spend a week with that child one-on-one and become that person that helps them through their life as well.
We've been having these discussions about a ministry hub,
Mhm.
and I think I see that now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like, if we just have a place,
Yep.
and the purpose of the place is for people to come in just who need to come in, well, then all those other things will take care, like, they'll be interjected in there somehow,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
Because the people that are going to come in are going to need these things. You know, the people who are that target demographic with nowhere to go.
Right.
Like, maybe none of us are good at parenting classes, but there's a church across the street or somewhere
Mhm.
else in Martinsburg who would be, so we contact them, we're like, hey, we got this
Mhm.
place, would you like to come do a parent, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that hub idea was really hard for me to grasp as
Yeah.
far as like what that was gonna be,
Oh,
really
yeah.
be like. And I think this
Well,
makes sense.
good.
And I don't really know which direction it's going with the ministry portion versus, nonprofit kind of thing. But hearing a lot of what you guys are doing is kind of a route that with TMI is what we're wanting to do.
Mhm.
We need hubs, that, we just got funding to kind of start expanding. And we're looking at wanting to create 3 hubs in the next year. One church just volunteered to be a hub, but even as another church, to be a hub as a community section and saying, offering different resources for people to be able to reach, to create that access to resources.
Right.
So I don't know if that's a route that
So
you
is the
guys are.
funding that you guys receive, is it money that's, can it be used in, like, any nonprofit, or like?
That's something that I'm not really for certain about, and that's where like I said, if you guys are interested in that, I can and a part of where we're getting our funding with, and what we have to do to keep getting the funding is we have to be collaborating with other
Yeah.
people, and a part of our vision is to collaborate with faith-based organizations,
Okay.
and we're just in the very beginning stages of that, but that's
That's awesome.
the biggest reason I came here, because I'm like, oh, that's right down the alley,
Yeah.
why reinvent the wheel when we can just be stronger together kind of thing,
Yeah, yeah.
so.
And I would bet if your organization has a vision to partner with faith-based, then the funds probably wouldn't be restricted from faith-based either.
Correct.
I would guess. And
Right.
now the government could, or wherever these funds are coming from, could
Right.
certainly dictate otherwise. But
Right.
and can I share one thing that a church and a faith-based whatever has to offer in all of this, that Boys and Girls Club and some of these others don't, is this right here. You all know where I'm going. Across all of this,
Right.
across all of it,
Right.
Yes,
I'm telling you,
The hope.
it's the difference
We have
maker.
the hope.
and
It's
they
the
have
difference
the
maker.
law.
I just ruined my marker, but it was for Jesus.
Right.
It's
Well,
the difference maker.
Yes, and so, while Rachel was talking, and I'm sitting here thinking, I wonder what Randy and Sheree are thinking, because I really want to know what you guys are thinking. Because here's the problem that I've heard our church say over and over again is, okay, so we're reaching the people in the city, we're talking to them, we've led them to Christ, they can't get to our church. We're 10 miles away. So there's a problem, there's a dichotomy, there's a separation here, of us being able to disciple them. And even though I can plug them into somebody else's church, which maybe they'll go, maybe they won't, but like there's a woman that we led to Christ 3 years ago who called me, and she's attempted suicide many times. She called and wanted to come to church, I went to go pick her up, and she said, I'm not going. So it's like, but if it was down the street, maybe she'd go, I don't know. But anyway, so what this unification, this hub thing does, is it provides a venue, a place for churches in the rural area who have more people resources, more money resources even, that want to reach out to be able to say, okay, well, we don't have a place, but we can go over there where that mom hub is, and you can, and we can get a room there. And, yeah.
Allowing to have a connection, it allows you that warm handle as well. So like if you do
Yes.
have someone, if you already have a relationship with the church,
Yeah.
and you have your contact person at that church, you can say, hey, I know so-and-so, send them your way.
Right.
Maybe even go with that
Exactly.
person and introduce the two, and then you do that warm handoff where you
Yes.
still are in contact.
Right, because one of the things is they want to be more likely to attend a church where they have an established relationship. But distance, like you said, is an issue. So if you have that, like you called it a warm handoff, then in an established point of contact, then people are more likely to follow through.
Right. And I'd like to interject something too. And Pastor Tim, don't kill me. One thing that I would encourage too in urban settings is we think outside the box of a traditional church.
Yeah.
In our mind, I don't mean traditional like we sing hymns, and I'm saying what a tradition like it can be okay if the church has to look different there. Like I think that's okay, and I hope that you receive that. And I'm not stepping on any toes, and I'm not saying that this church can't be a place where people come. It can absolutely be, but if the distance is too far or something like, and we can train people to go to them. Maybe there's people from this church that understand that it's okay if it looks a little different. Like a lot of people in addiction, going to a church service is awesome and it feeds them spiritually, but they need mentoring throughout the week. They need somebody who's right beside them. And so being the church to that person can look a little different than just a church service on Sunday morning. I'm not devaluing a Sunday morning service. I'm saying I think being the church can look a little bit different. And it's very important. In the urban context and setting, things just need to look a little different sometimes, and it's okay. Are you on board with that?
Yes.
And so,
I think there's also something that takes place that's a multiplying effect. I think that like when we begin to put these resources forward to address some of these things that are more like to help our city and to help people, then when people actually get saved and their lives transformed, if you get 30 or 40 people who through this ministry hub have had their lives transformed and they're hungry to know more about God, that changes everything. Because then you do need to go have a Bible study there. And it's almost at the point where then you have leaders that are coming out of your ministry that are like, this ministry changed my life, and that's a multiplying effect because their testimony is, almost like more powerful than somebody saying, oh, we're here doing this.
Right.
If that's the very place that
they're
they
a product
came.
of that.
Yes, and I think that's like there's a multiplying momentum once you get to that point that then like almost it can change the dynamic. Not that we're not doing the other things, but then it takes on this more discipling role that we want to do with the people that we've encountered. And if there's already some other church downtown doing that, then that can just feed in that their congregation grows from it. But if not, then it becomes this whole entity of its own, and it's not going to look like a church with a steeple. Probably it's going to be like we hang out in this room and we like are going through the scriptures talking about what the Christian life looks like.
And
Whatever.
I think that's so important too, because I know one of the families that I just recently started got a complete demented view of
Yeah.
Christianity because of her past and her family and how she grew up and what her view of Christianity is. So to be able to know, there's another entity that I can maybe start pushing her towards and saying, hey, here's a plug in, and then just letting her see the love of Christ in a whole new way would be so beneficial,
Yeah.
for that.
And what you guys are talking about is how the early church changed the Roman Empire. An empire was flipped upside down because of the love of Christians and people living this thing out. And there's absolutely value in a Sunday morning service in an established church, and whether that's this church or your, whatever. We're all in this thing together. And I think that's the heart of
Right.
what I love about the heart of this place and this team. But see, you really get me fired up. I'm supposed to be listening. But I think there's something incredible that happens. Well, I'm supposed to be listening to you guys and not stealing the time here, but you get me fired up. I think there's something beautiful that happens when we are the church in that setting. I'll give you one example, and I promise I'll shut up for like 5 minutes. We have some friends that, I told you before that we're kind of doing a missional community that's just kind of organically developed. Well, one of the couples in this are friends of mine and Hannah's, and the wife doesn't have a church background. And so I'm walking through the guys, we started in John, we're reading like 2 chapters a week, and we're talking about, hey, what's God speaking to you? How is it impacting you, and what are you doing about it? So Hannah's starting this journey with the wives, and what we're realizing is the one just doesn't have that foundation. She's reading, she's like, I'm completely confused. And so what we're realizing is like, okay, well, this is number one, an incredible opportunity, but we have to understand our approach, because we can say, let's have a Bible study. Someone's like, that's great, but I don't know what this Bible is even saying to study it. And so a lot of people we might minister to in an urban setting and the homelessness and the addiction setting, some of them may have deep-rooted religious backgrounds. Some of them don't know the first thing about it. And so we have to change our approach altogether to say, well, let's start from square one and not square 5 like we might be used to, because
Some people with blank slate might be better off than the people
True,
that have
true.
religious experience.
Yeah,
That are so
because
hurtful.
they're so much more hardened.
yeah, that can absolutely sometimes be the case, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's I know there's a church subculture here where there's a lot of abuse, in some of the churches.
Okay.
And so,
Financially controlled and things like that.
So overcoming
not
that.
just, there's also sexual and physical abuse, and controlling issues and things like that. So, especially in more backwoods, back alley,
Where we got the snakes and all that.
That's where I grew up going, so I'm good. I agree with you.
Pastor Tim.
Pastor Chris,
Also, too, and this may maybe be a byproduct of this, but talking about church culture, being a pastor, noticed a lot of things about the Christian community is that, there's an assumption that we have that people in the church know about their faith, know a lot about their faith, know why they stand where they stand, know what salvation truly is. And surprisingly, there's a lot of people that have been sitting in the seats a very long time that really do not know. And so as a byproduct kind of possibly of this type of ministry too, we also will be ministering to the Christian community in a way that they may have never seen before. Because their viewpoints of church revolve around the traditional, like you were talking about earlier, sitting in the seat and all this, and just attending from the consumer point of view. But seeing other Christians live out, I was talking, I think, to Randy and Sheree about this earlier, but my opinion in the United States, people have heard about Jesus, have heard about God, have heard about at least part of salvation. I mean, it's on the billboards, on TV, it's in the books. We're not short of that. But what we are short of is people seeing Jesus in the church.
Yes.
yes.
And I think that also goes to the Christian community as well, because so many of them are caught in whatever subcultures and different viewpoints of Christianity that they're not really seeing, I think, Jesus' true heart in his church. So
That's
I
so
think
profound.
that's what this also is about as well.
Yeah. And what better way to show that than, just being like Jesus, like rolling up your sleeves, ministering to the lead. That's awesome. Cool.
Randy, Sheree, what's going through your mind?
They're sponging back here.
I know. Because I think you have a different perspective, having lived and worked over in Jefferson County, it's a different mentality over there too. I mean, it's a horse track over there, it's very much a veteran community, it's somewhat different. And now you've moved into a very recluse part of Berkeley County. So, I don't know, I mean, what are some things that God has been revealing to you while you're here today? And how do you think that might play into something like this?
I don't know.
Okay,
And honestly, even what we're doing, we don't know.
okay.
You know, we're
Fair enough.
very fresh into what we're doing. You know, our focus right now is
Mhm.
learning the names of our neighbors.
Right.
And,
Which is a great starting spot.
what's that?
That's a great place to start, man.
Yeah, and that's, you know, our focus, what we've transitioned from briefly, is to be more focused on the people that we live beside versus having something for people to come to. With that being said, what excites us about this and what, you know, is beginning to have the gears turn is something for not only us to be a part of and help, you know, serve, but in hopes that we're leading people to Christ and discipling people in our neighborhood, that there are people who will come to Christ, I think this may have been said, and they'll never go to a church service.
Yeah.
Whether it's because they got burned or whether it's just because that thing that they don't want to do. Faith, full of it, but I just don't want to do that. And that's cool, that's fine, but
They don't wanna
let
be
me show
considered
you-
one of those.
yeah, but you know, having a place to point them to serve and to put their hands to work
Mhm.
is a powerful thing. Because you can't be void of that. And it's easy to serve when it's easy. You know, that's why it's easy to serve at church. It's easy there.
Well, and I think too, you would think you're saying, you know, some of these people may never go to an actual church,
Yeah.
but, you know, in Bible times, what was a church? Was it a building or was it a group of
That's
people?
right.
Yeah.
So even if it's a group of people who are meeting weekly, maybe if they don't ever go to a Sunday morning service, even if there's a small Bible study group that they can go to where they're
Absolutely.
still getting fed spiritually with a group of community that's gonna continue to build them up and help them through those tough
Right.
times.
That's what we've seen.
Yeah.
We were part of, you know, we were on staff at a church for 10 years. And that was great. And God has really begun to stir in us to transition some of that and become more disciplers.
Yeah,
Then-
we're focused on discipling now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You
we're excited
unlearning?
about that.
Are you having to unlearn some
Oh,
things?
it's completely rewired. It's awesome too. It
Yeah.
really
It's
is.
freeing, isn't it?
It's very
It is. But like the whole, you know, and when Rusty brought up, he was in here, but when you brought up the missional community, you know, that is kind of more our, focus.
Mhm.
But yeah, as soon as I heard about this happening, because that was one, like, we don't have a solid idea of anything, we're just kind of like, we don't know, I mean, but we do have a little bit of, you know, we want to gather people to build a relationship, but then, you know, we also want to be discipling them, in their, you know, spiritual growth, you know, but we also want, you know, to have a place to be able to serve together, because that's important, that's a big part of discipling people. And so that, you know, sort of that component of this was, you know, as soon as I read what this meeting was about, yes.
Yeah. I tell you what excites me is that when I talk to different people and I hear people's hearts like this, even if it all comes from a different perspective, everybody's saying the same thing. And that is they want to just want to tell people about Christ and make their lives better. And they need a place to do that because we don't all have all the resources we need. So, you know, if we have a place, a hub where people can plug into, even if your church only has 30 people, like ours, and only 2 people in that church feel called to do something, they can go somewhere and go do it. They don't have to wait for their church to develop a program.
Right,
You know?
right.
Well, and a lot of churches aren't developing programs.
No.
Like a lot of churches are saying,
Okay,
hey,
don't bring
this is
people
what we're
in.
doing. Because I know at our church, it's like, we do what we do, and they're gonna multiply that. And they're gonna support, when this happens, they're gonna be like, this is awesome, they're gonna ask us, what can we do to support what you're doing? but this is never gonna become a part of what they're doing.
Right.
Because and the reason they're successful is because they develop vision and mission, and they're focusing on that. So it's like, there's a lot of other organizations that are gonna be doing things different than what we are, but because they're in this sphere doing this, and we can butt up against right beside there, that because of those strengths and those existing things that are already happening, we can develop our sphere where we're gonna have influence and be effective in that area, you know, because we don't have to cover the whole entire thing.
Yeah.
You don't wanna ever duplicate services, you wanna,
Yeah, you don't wanna reinvent
you
the wheel.
wanna, right, you wanna go in where there's a hole and then help someone else continue to be stronger than what they are,
Yeah.
you know?
It's just point.
You serve
Yeah.
more people and you're stronger that way as well, so you don't wanna keep putting the same resources into the same person, kind of thing.
Which you guys just made a perfect segue into our next part. So I don't want to interrupt the conversation. I want to put a comma to ask if anybody wants to take a picture before I erase this.
Yeah.
And we're gonna start talking vision and start getting some of that stuff. So, guys, how are we on time? I know
We're
we
out of
started a
time.
little behind and all that, but
About to go.
you guys have to take off. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll see you guys.
It's been great.
It's great to see you.
Nice to meet you guys.
Can everybody stick around for a couple more minutes? Okay.
Thank you.
It's good seeing you.
We'll keep rocking and rolling.
It's good to see you.
Too.
I'm so excited to see you guys again. Absolutely. All right.
Hey, it's good meeting you
Yeah,
guys.
good meeting you.
Okay, can we go back real quick?
Yeah.
Yes, they can.
Yes.
Let's get to know each other sometime.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Especially if things are kind of similar with
Yes, for real.
what's in the wake. So,
Yeah, God has really been opening us up. Like we read, what book did we read during the,
Missional class.
yes,
that has led us down this rabbit trail?
Yes.
It's very similar.
that's kind of how it started for us.
It's just super exciting because, for one, it's so new. You know, it's doing something different. And once you step into that world of possibility, it's like, oh, wait a minute, we can do this different.